Security questions are the #1 reason IT professionals fail the AZ-900. Not because the concepts are impossible, but because Microsoft loves to test services that sound almost identical. Defender for Cloud, Microsoft Sentinel, Azure Key Vault, Zero Trust, Shared Responsibility. If you mix any of these up on exam day, those marks are gone. In part 2 of our 10-part series, we are going through 10 realistic security questions with full answers and explanations, so you walk into that exam knowing exactly which service does what and why. I promised at the end of part 1 that part 2 would be challenging. I kept that promise. Let us go. Welcome back to Skills on Cloud. If you are new here, this channel is dedicated to helping IT professionals build real cloud skills and pass Microsoft certifications. If you missed part 1, the link is in the description. This is part 2 of 10, and by the end of all 10 parts, you will have covered 100 exam-style questions. Make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss a single part. Before we start, a quick note on where security sits in the AZ-900. Security concepts appear across all 3 exam domains, but they are most concentrated in Azure Management and Governance, which covers 30 to 35% of the exam. The passing score remains 700 out of 1,000. In this part, all 10 questions focus on Azure security, making this a high-value session. Same format as part 1. I read the question you think, I reveal the answer, and I explain why each option is right or wrong. Let us get into question 1. Question 1. Under the Azure Shared Responsibility model, which of the following is always the responsibility of the customer, regardless of the cloud service model used? Option A, Physical Data Center Security. Option B, Network Infrastructure. Option C, Identity and Access Management. Option D, Host Infrastructure. Take a few seconds to think. The answer is C, Identity and Access Management. The shared responsibility model defines what Microsoft manages and what you manage. Physical data center security, network infrastructure, and host infrastructure are responsibilities Microsoft takes on across all cloud service models, whether IaaS, PaaS, or SaaS. However, identity and access management is always the customer's responsibility. You are always responsible for who has access to your systems and data. Microsoft cannot manage your users, passwords, or access policies for you. On the exam, any answer about identity, data classification, or account management will almost always fall on the customer side of the shared responsibility line. Question 2. A security team wants a unified tool that provides a security score, identifies misconfigurations across Azure resources, and offers hardening recommendations. Which Azure service best meets this requirement? Option A, Microsoft Sentinel. Option B, Azure Monitor. Option C, Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Option D, Azure Policy. Think about it for a moment. The answer is C, Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Defender for Cloud is specifically designed to assess your security posture, calculate a secure score, and provide actionable recommendations to harden your environment. Microsoft Sentinel, Option A, is a cloud-native SIEM and SOAR tool that collects security data and helps detect and respond to threats. It does not provide a security score or hardening recommendations. Azure Monitor, Option B, handles performance metrics and logs, not security posture. Azure Policy, Option D, enforces compliance rules but does not score or recommend security improvements. The key phrase in this question is security score and hardening recommendations, which point directly to Defender for Cloud every time. Question 3. A developer needs to store database connection strings and API keys securely so that they are not hard-coded in application code. Which Azure service is designed for this purpose? Option A, Azure Storage Account. Option B, Azure Key Vault. Option C, Azure Active Directory. Option D, Azure App Configuration. Take a moment. The answer is B, Azure Key Vault. Azure Key Vault is a managed service specifically designed to store and control access to secrets such as passwords, connection strings, API keys, and certificates. It removes the need to hard-code sensitive values in application code. Azure Storage Account, Option A, is for storing files, blobs, and tables, not secrets management. Azure Active Directory, Option C, now called Microsoft Entra ID, handles identity and authentication, not secret storage. Azure App Configuration, option D, stores application settings and feature flags, but is not designed for sensitive secret management the way Key Vault is. The keyword in this question is secrets, which maps directly to Azure Key Vault. Question 4. Which Zero Trust principle states that access should be granted based on verified identity, device health, location, and other signals, rather than assuming trust based on network location? Option A. Assume breach. Option B. Use least privilege access. Option C. Verify explicitly. Option D. Segment the network. What do you think? The answer is C. Verify explicitly. The Zero Trust model is built on 3 core principles. Verify explicitly means always authenticate and authorize based on all available data points, including identity, location, device health, service, workload, and data classification. Assume breach, option A, means operating as if a breach has already occurred, so you minimize blast radius and do not implicitly trust anything inside the network perimeter. Use least privilege access, option B, means granting only the minimum permissions needed to do the job. Segment the network, option D, is a related security practice but is not one of the 3 official Zero Trust principles. The question describes a verification process based on multiple signals, which is verify explicitly. Question 5. A company wants to protect its Azure resources from large-scale volumetric network attacks without incurring additional costs. Which Azure DDoS protection tier should they use? Option A, Azure DDoS Network Protection. Option B, Azure DDoS IP Protection. Option C, Azure DDoS Infrastructure Protection. Option D, Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Think carefully, there is a pricing distinction here. The answer is C, Azure DDoS Infrastructure Protection, previously called DDoS Basic. This tier is automatically enabled for all Azure resources at no additional cost. It provides always-on traffic monitoring and real-time mitigation of common network-level attacks. Azure DDoS Network Protection, option A, is the paid tier that adds advanced mitigation capabilities, cost protection guarantees, and expert support. It is applied at the virtual network level and carries a significant monthly cost. Azure DDoS IP Protection, option B, is a newer per-IP tier that sits between infrastructure protection and network protection in features and cost. Microsoft Defender for Cloud, option D, handles security posture and threat detection, not DDoS mitigation. The phrase without incurring additional cost points to infrastructure protection, since it is included by default for all Azure customers. Pause here for a second. We are halfway through. How are you doing so far? Drop your score out of 5 in the comments right now. If you scored 5 out of 5, honestly impressive, because these are tricky. If you are scoring lower, do not stress. The explanations are the whole point of this series. Also, if there is a specific Azure security service you want me to go deeper on in a future video, tell me in the comments and I will add it. Alright, 5 more questions, and I have saved the most deceptive one for last. Question 6. What is the primary difference between a network security group and Azure Firewall? Option A, network security groups are a paid service while Azure Firewall is free. Option B, network security groups filter traffic at the subnet or network interface level, while Azure Firewall is a managed, stateful firewall service with advanced threat intelligence. Option C, Azure Firewall can only be used with on-premises networks. Option D, network security groups support application-level filtering, while Azure Firewall only supports IP filtering. Take a second. The answer is B. A network security group, or NSG, is a basic layer of traffic filtering applied at the subnet or network interface card level. It uses rules based on source and destination IP, port, and protocol. Azure Firewall is a managed cloud-native stateful firewall service that operates at a higher level, supporting threat intelligence, FQDN filtering, application rules, and centralized policy management. Option A is wrong because NSGs are free and Azure Firewall is the paid service. Option C is wrong because Azure Firewall works with Azure Virtual Networks. Option D is the reverse of the truth. Remember, NSG equals basic traffic rules. Azure Firewall equals advanced managed protection. Question 7. An organization wants to collect security event data from multiple sources, including Azure services, on-premises systems, and third-party applications, and use machine learning to detect unusual activity across the entire environment. Which Azure service is designed for this? Option A, Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Option B, Azure Monitor. Option C, Microsoft Sentinel. Option D, Azure Security Center. Think about the scope here. The answer is C, Microsoft Sentinel. Microsoft Sentinel is a cloud-native security information and event management tool, known as SIEM, and security orchestration automated response tool, known as SOAR. It ingests data from across the entire digital estate, applies built-in machine learning and AI to detect threats, and enables automated investigation and response. Microsoft Defender for Cloud, Option A, is focused on Azure Resource Security Posture, not broad multi-source event collection. Azure Monitor, Option B, collects performance and diagnostic data, not security event intelligence. Azure Security Center, Option D, is the old name for Microsoft Defender for Cloud, so if both appear on your exam, treat them as the same product. The key phrase in this question is multiple sources and machine learning, which describes Sentinel precisely. Question 8. Which Azure feature allows an application to authenticate to Azure services such as Key Vault and storage without storing credentials in code or configuration files? Option A, Azure Multi-Factor Authentication. Option B, Service Principal with Client Secret. Option C, Managed Identity. Option D, Shared Access Signature. You should have a strong feel for this one. The answer is C, Managed Identity. A managed identity is an identity automatically created in Microsoft Entra ID for an Azure resource such as a virtual machine or app service. The resource uses this identity to authenticate to any service that supports Entra ID authentication, with no credentials stored anywhere. Azure Multi-Factor Authentication, Option A, is about verifying human user identities with a second factor, not application-to-service authentication. Service Principal with Client Secret, Option B, does allow app authentication but requires you to store and manage a secret, which is exactly the problem managed identities solve. Shared Access Signature, Option D, is used for delegated access to Azure storage and is credential-based. Managed identity equals no credentials to manage. That is the entire point of the feature. Question 9. A company needs to ensure that all virtual machines deployed in a specific Azure subscription have disk encryption enabled. Which approach best enforces this requirement automatically? Option A, Azure Key Vault. Option B, Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Option C, Azure Policy. Option D, Azure Blueprints with a manual checklist. Take your time. The answer is C, Azure Policy. Azure Policy lets you define rules that Azure resources must comply with. You can create a policy that requires disk encryption on all virtual machines, and any non-compliant resource will be flagged or denied. Azure Key Vault, Option A, stores the encryption keys used by disk encryption, but it does not enforce whether encryption is enabled or not. Microsoft Defender for Cloud, Option B, will recommend that you enable disk encryption as a best practice, but recommendations are advisory, not enforcement. Azure Blueprints with a manual checklist, Option D, is not an automated enforcement mechanism. Blueprints can package policies, but the enforcement still comes from the underlying Azure policy definition. When the question asks what enforces a requirement automatically, the answer is almost always Azure Policy. And here it is. Question 10. I told you I saved the most deceptive one for last. A security architect is designing a defense in-depth strategy for an Azure environment. They list the following security layers: physical, identity, perimeter, network, compute, application, and data. In which order does defense in-depth apply these layers, moving from outermost to innermost? Option A, data, application, compute, network, perimeter, identity, physical. Option B, physical, perimeter, identity, network, compute, application, data. Option C, physical, identity, perimeter, network, compute, application, data. Option D, identity, physical, perimeter, network, data, compute, application. This one catches a lot of people who think they know the model. Think carefully. The answer is C, physical, identity, perimeter, network, compute, application, data. The Microsoft Defense in-depth model defines 7 layers from outside to inside in this exact sequence. Physical is the outermost ring, protecting the data center hardware itself. Identity and access is next, controlling who can interact with the environment. Perimeter defends against network-based attacks like DDoS. Network limits communication between resources. Compute secures access to virtual machines and operating systems. Application ensures software is secure and free from vulnerabilities. Data is the innermost layer and ultimately the most important, because it is what attackers are actually trying to reach. The reason this is a trick question is that identity appearing before perimeter feels counterintuitive to many people who expect the network boundary to come first. But in the Microsoft model, identity is the new perimeter, which is also a core zero-trust concept. Physical equals outermost. Data equals innermost. Identity comes before network perimeter. Lock that order in, and you will not lose this mark on exam day. That is all 10 security questions for Part 2. Quick recap. Question 1. Identity and access management is always the customer's responsibility under the shared responsibility model. Question 2. Microsoft Defender for Cloud provides the security score and hardening recommendations. Question 3. Azure Key Vault stores secrets like connection strings and API keys. Question 4. Verify explicitly is the zero-trust principle that validates all signals before granting access. Question 5. Azure DDoS infrastructure protection is the default free always-on tier. Question 6. NSGs filter at the subnet level. Azure Firewall is the managed stateful service with threat intelligence. Question 7. Microsoft Sentinel is the SIEM and SOAR tool for multi-source threat detection. Question 8. Managed identity allows applications to authenticate without storing credentials. Question 9. Azure Policy enforces configuration requirements like disk encryption automatically. Question 10. Defense in-depth order is physical, identity, perimeter, network, compute, application, data. How many did you get right? Drop your score out of 10 in the comments. In Part 3 of this series, we are moving into Azure Identity and Access Management. 10 questions covering Microsoft Entra ID, multi-factor authentication, role-based access control, conditional access policies, and the difference between authentication and authorization. Identity questions are everywhere on the AZ-900, and the terminology traps are brutal. Entra ID, Azure AD, RBAC, PIM, SSO, MFA. Part 3 will make sure you never mix them up. I will see you there. If this video helped you, please hit the like button right now. It genuinely helps this channel reach more IT professionals preparing for the same exam. And if you are not subscribed yet, you have about 10 seconds before the end screen takes over. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so Part 3 lands straight in your feed the moment it is live. Thank you for watching. Keep building those cloud skills. See you in Part 3.